does have more experience.
I'd like to welcome you to our session called A Family Affair. It's called A Family Affair because brain injury, as you all know, affects the whole family.
What's that? You do dishes.
I'll do that.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Paula Sparks, and you may wonder why Bev and I are, the two of us are here leading this, facilitating this program. But we are both brain injury survivors who have also had experience with family members who have had a brain injury. My father had a stroke over 40 years ago when I had just finished my junior year of high school. And because of that, I thought I knew everything there was to know about stroke. But when I had my stroke in August of 2006, I realized that I had a lot to learn.
And I'm Bev Bryant. I'm a survivor of traumatic brain injury and a stroke. But I too am also a caregiver for my husband who has chemo brain. After having pancreatic cancer and chemo, we noticed that he had fallen into the same field that I had, and we had the same problem. So I spent a lot of time helping him as he helped me, and we both had more patience for each other. Please remember that we're not therapists. We are here just as families, sharing with families what we've experienced in hopes that we can help each other. We put together what I think is a fabulous contingency of panelists for today's discussion, and they can introduce themselves. I want to start at the end of the panel.
I'm Ron Guerin. My wife's name is Priscilla.
And I'm Dawn Starr, and my daughter is Carol Starr.
I'm Carrie Raymond, and my mother is Beverly.
I'm Faith Morno, and my sister is Mindy Morno.
Brain injury often comes as a result of serious physical injuries or illnesses. Because of this, it may be a while before you realize the diagnosis of brain injury is actually made. How and when did some of you become aware that your loved one had sustained a brain injury? Ron, could you?
On August 23rd of 2010, received a phone call from one of my wife's co-workers stating that she was clammy, sweating, and that she had collapsed in the lunchroom. And for me to get over there is ASAP. Upon arriving at the where she was working, the ambulance was already there, and they transported her. It's a sight I don't want to ever see again. They transported her to Southern Maine Medical Center, and by the time I got there, they had already performed an MRI, and the doctor on duty brought us into the room and they showed us her MRI, and it was the size of an orange, big orange blob on the screen, and the prognosis was not very good. So they immediately faxed all that information over to Maine Medical Center, and they transported her over there. And the doctors came in the room where, by that time, all my siblings were there and her siblings were there, and filled up the room. And the doctors notified us that it was an extremely delicate operation, very dangerous, it was very severe. And what she had was called an AVM, which is an arterial venous malformation. It's called an AVM. What it is, it's an artery that goes up the side of your temple, and from there you get little veins that protrude from it like an octopus, and that's what feeds part of your brain. And her section, it was the right side, and the right side controls the left side. And that happened at birth. These little things got a little tangled up at birth, and according to the paperwork that we received, we looked at the age of 60 is when the veins tend to probably let go. She was 2 months shy of, or 62 years old. And and what happened, it ruptured, and that's what that hemorrhage formed, and that pushed the brain right out of the cavity. And they came in and they told us what they were going to do. They were going to sever the AVM, remove the hemorrhage, And at that time, they told us it might take up to 2 years before the brain came back down into her cavity, and had no idea what her difficulties or was any damage done to her. But miraculously, she spent over 8 weeks right here at New England Rehab, and another year and a half, 2 years in outpatient rehab. And today she's doing very well. She has a slight dysfunction on the left side. She can't, the peripheral vision is gone a little bit. She can't drive. And basically, she's very fortunate to be here. The doctor told us that it was a miracle that she's here. And she's literally going over the cliff, and he grabbed down and reached by the ankle and pulled her back. And when he told us that, I just about shook my pants, I'll tell you. It was very nerve-wracking. But she's here today, and that's how I found out that she had a stroke.
Dawn, how about you?
Okay, my daughter Carol, she was in a car accident around 14 years ago, and at that time didn't realize she had a concussion, and they went for to emergency, and they said, well, probably she'll be okay, and the extent of the injury will be the bruises and everything like that, and so this is how it went for a month or so, and so it was being treated for the superficial injuries, and then she thought that, well, the easiest way to overcome my issues is to push harder and push harder, and she was having trouble trying to figure out what to cook for supper, or go to the refrigerator and look in the refrigerator, and couldn't figure out what to have, and going to the grocery store was a real difficult experience, and of course she wanted to be on her own, so when we asked about anything, she usually made out that it wasn't as bad. She was hiding all of the real symptoms that she was having, and finally realized that there was a concussion, and more medical advice was needed, and so it was a gradual process of really finding out that she did have a concussion, and that the approach that she was taking, that I'll just push harder. It always worked before, and why shouldn't it work now? And that wasn't the case, and then she tried to continue working, and she was so tired, and so that didn't work, and so it was. I think it was a long process to really realize what she had, and then from her perspective to realize that Carol wasn't the same Carol she was before her accident, that she was going to be a new Carol, and so many of the things that she loved and enjoyed wasn't going to be part of her life, and she spent many years trying to go back to all the things that she previously enjoyed, and it just didn't work. She loved music and playing the violin and doing things like that, and she had an extreme sound sensitivity, and that was so difficult. And so probably the turning point was when she realized that, well, her life was going to change, and that there was people that would help her out on that change. She had to have all kinds of different therapies to learn how to cook, learn how to go to the grocery store, be organized, live on a schedule that had what one was going to do every hour in the day, and have time to have naps, and usually 2 naps a day. And it was, it's been a gradual process, and I think that aspect to try to portray yourself being better than you are it will always continue, but I think as you go along, then you realize a little bit of that is that you can't do everything you want to do, and you have to make time for having some rest, and well, even though that maybe you feel pretty good, that sometimes you don't realize till it's too late. And in the beginning, we had to go rescue her from here, or from a doctor's appointment, or go visit somewhere because she did too much, and so she couldn't drive, and but it's been a gradual process and a learning process for everyone.
Oh, how about you, Carrie?
Well, very similar to Dawn's story. My mother was involved in a car accident about 22 years ago, so it was quite a while ago. Back then, I think brain injury really wasn't in the forefront of anything. She went into the hospital. I don't even think we were clear on whether the car accident caused the stroke or whether the stroke caused the car accident. Really all we saw was the physical injuries, and we didn't, at least I wasn't even aware of anything that was going on in her brain and how she was functioning. It really wasn't until about 6 months after, because she was released right home, that she just collapsed. And I think similar to what Dawn said with Carol, I think my mother's the kind of person that just, oh, something's wrong, I'm just going to keep battling on, and basically get to the point where her whole body shut down. It was then that she went to New England rehab, and even then, I don't think I knew why she was there, other than she collapsed, and I thought, oh, she's getting her legs strong, she's getting her physical injuries dealt with, but I really didn't know what brain injury was, and had no idea. I was teaching at the time, first grade, and I can remember coming to New England rehab, and my mother was going to speech therapy, and of course I'm thinking to myself, why is she going to speech therapy? You know, I just couldn't even envision what that was going to do to help. And I remember the speech therapist asking me if I wanted to go into the session, and I'm like, no, I'm fine. But then I found myself listening at the door, literally ear right up to the door, because I wanted to hear what she was doing. And I can remember her asking my mother questions, and my mother not answering the right answers, and I'm like, what's going on here? And it really was that awareness of something's not right, and I didn't know it. But I knew there were subtle changes that were happening. I remember taking her out on a day trip to get her out, because she just wanted to get out. And I can remember stopping quickly at a red light, or somebody had cut me off, and right in the middle, she stuck up her middle finger, and and she just held it right up there. I'm like mortified, like, what is this? I mean, she'd never ever do something like that, ever. And I'm like, keep your finger down! I'm like, oh my gosh! I was so embarrassed. But it was those subtle changes over time that I realized she wasn't who she was. And it really wasn't until she wrote her book several years later that I started to understand what she was feeling, what she was going through, because she really just kept that all inside, because she's strong and she can do it herself, and she can take care of this, she can overcome this, and I don't think a lot of us even realized some of the battles she was dealing with at that time. But I think now it's much different with brain injury. I think we understand a little bit more than we did 20 years ago.
My sister, I remember getting a call. She had a game in Maine Maritime. She was a goalie of a soccer team, and we got a call on September 12, 2010 that she had been hit pretty hard, and she lost consciousness and was now in the hospital. They knew then that she had a concussion and that there was going to be some difficulties, but it was just, we never, I wasn't there, so we didn't know, what was really going on. And I mean, my sister, she, being the goalie, has had many concussions, and she's become normal again. We didn't know, maybe this was just another one of those concussions, and that after this that she'd be becoming back to normal, because she was also finishing her senior year of college at this time, which was really important to her. And later on, after appointments, we realized that after this concussion, there was some major changes to her life, and that she was never going to get back to the way she was because of how severe the concussion truly was. So.
Yeah, there's a large range of emotions that we feel when we're told that our loved one has a brain injury. And getting personal, and it's kind of hard, but can you describe how you felt when you found out that your loved one had an injury? We all react differently. How did you find out? Or how did you feel when you found out? Don't have to go in order. Anyone want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. I think my emotions were really mixed. I really didn't understand what a brain injury was, and so it really was a kind of a gradual process of understanding what she was going through, trying to figure out what, as parents, what we can do to help her, and she still has to, wanted to be independent, and where do you step in, or and when do you not step in the situation, and so I think probably emotionally the hardest part was trying to figure out when to provide advice and when to console somebody. When somebody is got deer in the headlights kind of syndrome, you can't be offering advice. You get to be something like a doctor said, well, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. But with Carol, it was maybe, why don't you have a cup of tea? You know, maybe you should rest on the couch for a little while. Have you got any bananas or some fruit, and well, what are you going to have for supper tonight? Have you got something prepared? And then go through those things, and after I think then you kind of learn more about the symptoms, so that you can feel as if that you're trying to help, you're helping the situation. And once you're not going to change the point of view that she has a brain injury, but the improvements are so small and gradual, and learn that this is what it is.
Nick, somebody?
Yeah, I'll go. My emotions were pretty ecstatic. When she lost consciousness, and after the operation, she was in the recovery room, the intensive care, and we didn't know if she was going to wake up, if she did wake up, if she going to move. So for the first 2 weeks, it took a while before she actually moved the finger. Yes, you know. So and then as time went on, she started getting a little better. And as far as the stroke system, my brother had suffered a stroke where he was paralyzed on the left side just 2 years prior to that. And I spent some time over here visiting him at the New England Rehab. So I had a little general idea of what was gonna happen. Of course, every stroke victim is different, as we all know that, and the recovery process is always different. And she's still recovering. And I think we come to the support group meetings here twice a month, which has been a great benefit. Being a caregiver, it has helped me considerably. There is a caregiver group that meets on the 3rd Mondays every month, but the 2 that I attend with the survivors has helped me to understand a lot more about the stroke and her condition. And everybody's the same. She takes a nap. Sometimes she'll sleep twice, or she'll just sleep an entire morning into the mid-afternoon. If she sleeps, I just let her go, let her sleep. And that's the best thing you can do. But it's a long process. On August 23rd is new birthday, and she has, keeps improving. I keep probing her to do more, and to get her more active, you know. But you can't force them, they go at their own pace. Everybody has their own pace. So, but she's doing very well.
How do you feel? Either one of you been?
Well, for me, I felt really kind of sad because I really looked up to Mindy. She was that sister in the family that kind of, if you ever had a problem, you'd always go to her and she'd always fix it. And when I found out she wasn't going to be the same, it was just like, you're not going to get that funny girl. And it was really hard. And I also was nervous because I roomed with her. So I didn't want to put too much light or make too much noise. So it was really difficult because I didn't know what a traumatic brain injury really was. Like, I knew she had had concussions, and yes, it takes time, but these are symptoms that she was going to have. So I was really confused to what was going on, and I was kind of almost a little mad. I'm not going to lie. I was really mad that this had happened, and now I realized that I'm okay with it, that even though she has this traumatic brain injury, that it's helped her, and it's also helped our family a lot, and it's just amazing to have something so traumatizing to become one of the best things that has happened.
Carrie?
For me, when I think about how I felt about brain injury and what happened to my mom, at first I was very confused. I just didn't know what was going on. I was frustrated. There were times I was shocked when she did the middle finger thing and did things that were out of her norm. Sometimes embarrassed at some of the things that she would do, and but mostly just I didn't understand. Afterwards, when she was at rehab, I started to feel very guilty because I wasn't listening to the therapist. I wasn't listening to the doctors. I was listening to my mother. And she was filling me with all kinds of stories that were not accurate. For instance, she was gray belted into her seat. Oh, I don't need this. No, just take it off. And of course, I'm like, taking it off. And poor nurses, I felt so bad, the things I would do. And she would just convince me into, oh, everything's fine. I really shouldn't even be here. I don't know why I'm here. And then I'd feel guilty that she was there. And why have I left her there? And she's not enjoying her time, and I just didn't realize the things that she was having trouble with. I just didn't recognize it. I think once I finally accepted the new person, it was that loss, that feeling of she's gone, that piece of her is gone. There's still so much there, but that person that I would go to and share everything that was going on in the day, and I could recall everything that I said, and the person I could go to for a problem, or just that would solve that problem for me, or even to as simple as I'm picking out curtains for my house and what color should I choose. It was all that stuff that you just go to your mom for, and all of a sudden she wasn't that mom anymore. And it took a long time to get over that. It was truly a loss, and grieving that person that you miss. I mean, it's been 22 years now, and I've come to love the person that's here now, and all the things she has to offer, and it's better. But you definitely go through those feelings all the time, of what you've lost and now what you have.
Brain injury exhibits itself in many ways, and many of which are inconsistent and unpredictable. These are challenges for both the caregiver and the survivor. What symptoms or side effects have been the hardest for you to deal with with your loved one?
Pick out one.
Yeah, well, for me, it's mood swings. We all generate mood swings, but people with the TBIs, brain injuries, tend to have it more frequent and more severe. I mean, if you're a happy person or a joyful person, before you had a brain injury, you'll be more joyful. And I've exhibited that with some of the survivors that I've seen in the past. And some are somewhat on the downside. And when she goes through a mood swing and I call it probably a deep depression, she's totally changed, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So you have to have a lot more tolerance, and understand and trying to feel for her what she's going through. She's going through a tremendous amount of emotions, trying to recoup some of her inner self. Like she's a very independent person as well, but you have to let her go through her pace a little bit. Just being there, watching her, make sure she doesn't do anything that's going to hurt her. So that's been my role. It's getting a little bit better because she's starting to come through a little bit more. But it's been a trying experience, but when she's joyful, she's getting there. Slow. It's a slow process.
Yeah, for myself personally, I think, you think of the medical profession, and there's a pill, there's an operation, there's a procedure that in time you're going to be better, you're going to be the same person, and everything is going to be normal again. And to realize that this wasn't the case, and to accept that probably was the hardest thing, and then to learn how to deal with the situation and how to provide that comfort, that support, and that will work for the situation. I think that was the hardest part to deal with for me.
Jerry?
I think probably some of the symptoms I mentioned earlier, is being able to stay, the inability to help me with decision making was like she was my go-to person for that. But another symptom that I found hard was being able to stay tuned into a conversation and staying engaged in a conversation. And even with my daughter, she's young, and she would recognize, that kind of slipping out of a conversation, like, "Hey, Grammy, pay attention to me," and she was too young to understand that. But when she was on overload, then, and obviously an 8-year-old can't overload, sometimes, especially even being younger. But, I think, and for me personally, probably one of the hardest symptoms was being able to enjoy the things that we enjoyed together, being in a crowd or being at a family function, and all those were very overwhelming, and so you kind of have to learn to avoid those triggers.
For me, the hardest thing was my sister would have random aggression outbursts, and you wouldn't know if she was going to hurt someone or if she was going to hurt herself, and it was really hard because you never know when this thing was going to come on. Like, one minute we're having this normal conversation and someone says something, the next minute she's stomping off because she doesn't know how to handle it. She's going to do something that would either hurt her or the people around her, and it was probably the hardest thing that I had to deal with because I also roomed with her. So I'd go to bed saying, "God, please don't let her have an anger outburst. Please, I just want to wake up tomorrow and be okay, But it just, like, anything would make her angry, and that was the hardest thing, trying not to upset her, say things that would just get her angry, and so.
And can I add one thing? And that just reminded me that one of that fight or flight kind of thing, my mom would get to the point where she would just get overloaded and she would just run. And it didn't matter if she was on the streets of Edinburgh and she just ran into the streets, or if she was, in somebody's living room and she just ran out. And I never knew whether to run after her, whether to, you want to keep her safe, and so there was that piece, but also not knowing what to do after that.
Okay. I think we've all survived by using strategies during our recovery. I know that they've certainly been a lifesaver for me. What strategies do you use to cope with the changes in your loved one? In brief.
I know for me, I have to, and I still have to work on it, but I try to learn to talk slower. If there's something I really need my mom to listen to and to understand, I have to talk just slower and just take it time. I need to give her time to think and time to respond and not overload her. Or don't ask her to do more than one thing at a time, which terribly guilty of, because my mind's going so fast. And that's about it. You know, and we avoid the crowds, avoid the loud events and things like that.
Strategy for myself, I wake up in the morning and I get myself ready and breakfast and all that, and I wait till she gets up. And that tells me what kind of a day I'm gonna have. And that's how it goes. If she gets up and she's in a smiling mood, okay, all right, we're in for a good mood. And I'll ask her what she would like to do today. Go shopping. Now that the nice weather is there, she'll probably take her recumbent bike and off she goes around the neighborhood, which she loves to do. Then later on during the summer will be kayaking. She wants to try kayaking. So it's one of the things, but it's in the morning. It's how the rest of the day is going to be. And I do the best I can to make sure she's safe and find out what she wants for meals and stuff like that. And that's my strategy.
Good.
What her day begins.
Done.
Yeah, probably my strategy is try to provide advice, but not try to make their decisions, because she's living independently and on her own, and probably in order to do this, you kind of have to have a little feeling of, well, what's been going on in your life this week? Have you got 2 doctor's appointments, you're going to Voices, and you're going to the support group, and going to visit friends, and then you can say, well, geez, you know, you've got to start to think about how many things or activities you got this week, and do you have enough energy? Are you going to be able to cope with all of these? And then if it all goes to heck and you can't do all of it, then you got to realize you can't talk about about all the issues that went wrong. You got to wait till one has recovered a little bit to really discuss how can you better solve the issues here, and let's look at your schedule and all of that stuff. So those issues, it has to wait till Carol feels better and has the ability to talk about these and look at it from a rational point of view. And so probably the best advice when discussing all these things, do you want quantity or do you want quality experiences? And then she'll start to think about that, and then sometimes my way of doing it is repeat after me. I, Carol, will change this or do this, and so it kind of changes the mood a little bit, and then you can still offer some advice in a, kind of a laughing way.
I think he's the last one.
For me, I would mostly kind of try to talk to my mom. I didn't quite understand what my sister was going through, so I'd always talk to her and try to get understanding on what was actually going on and how things are actually going to change for her. And also, like, look at my sister's body language, because with that I'd be able to know if I could say certain things or if I needed to keep my mouth shut, which was quite useful. But yeah, just to look at the body language and then like put 2 and 2 together, like, oh, I can have this conversation, or oh, she's not up to this conversation, or just see maybe she needed to rest, see if she needed to go lay down, and that's what I did.
There's another strategy that she has the short-term memory loss. Long-term is fine. The short-term memory loss, and it only pertains to days and dates. So one of the strategies we have a big white board that's on the kitchen wall, and it's the calendar, and you write down all her appointments, everything that's coming up during the month, and things for the following month we put on the side, and then at least she gets up in the morning and she can check the board And she probably checks it 2 or 3 times during the day, because that short-term memory loss is, you know, she just doesn't, once it sinks in, it's all right. Then she's constantly telling me what we got going today, what's tomorrow. I just say nothing. Then she can relax, and like today, she knew she was coming here today. She prepares herself the night before. For whatever the appointment comes up, she prepares her mind the night before. Then when she gets up, she's got something to do. So those are one of the strategies, and keeping the calendar. She keeps a daily planner in a pocketbook, and anything comes up, she writes it down. Those are big strategies for brain injury people that I know of. That a lot of them, they do that. They have a calendar, but we got ours right there on the kitchen wall.
That sort of leads us into, in a way, into my next question, and that is, if you could offer one suggestion to help other families cope, what would it be? And also, it's perhaps not just for the loved one in your family, but for yourself. You know, what do you do for yourself to help yourself cope with some of the challenges that you're facing?
Well, my suggestion to help is for the people is have patience with your loved ones. Inform your siblings, anybody and their friends. Unfortunately, all our friends and siblings, they all know what her conditions is, and they're a little bit more enthused, and they know what to expect. But a lot of patience, and as the caregiver, trust me, you need patience. For my outlet, there's not a whole lot of outlet I have, so I just I bear with it, and my family helps me out considerably to help facilitate her ongoing treatments and therapy, and getting better, and patience.
Okay, good.
You know, well, I think a brain injury is an ongoing process. I think that there is improvements every day, every year, but the improvements are very small, and to appreciate those improvements that one makes, and maybe in a normal situation, the changes aren't anything, but from a stroke or a brain injury perspective, they really are big changes, and it does make a big difference in quality of life, and so it's a continued process, and just don't give up. That there's those little minute changes still continue.
And I totally agree, patience is huge, and I think knowing that things can get better. I've seen a lot happen in 20 years. I mean, so much growth in 20 years, so things can change and get better. I think for me, the number one suggestion would be get yourself educated. Just read what you can, grab therapists and ask them questions, and just learn what you can know, because not knowing is so much harder. It's easier to deal with when you know why it's happening, and you might not get all the information you want from your loved one, but getting it from other people as well, and participating in any kind of support groups, I think is really helpful. Talking with somebody else who's going through the same thing, and seeing what strategies they're using.
No, but probably have another comment that then as you go along with support groups, then you realize you're not the only one going through it. There are a heck of a lot of other people going through it, and that doesn't solve the issue, but it provides some comfort that there's a lot of other people going through the same situation, or maybe, geez, other people have their circumstances a heck of a lot worse than what you're going through, and be thankful that you can deal with the ones that you're dealing with.
Yeah, and kind of on that note, to look at the good and not the bad. You're always going to have to remember that this person is not going to be the same, and things aren't going to go exactly the way you planned, but of the situation, to look at what the person is doing compared to how they were, and you always have to know that they're not going to be the same person, but that does not change who they really are. And you don't want to also remind them that they can't get back to there, because that's really hard for them, knowing I'm never gonna be able to do that. Cause with Mindy, soccer was her main thing. She would always look at that, and it was hard for her knowing that she couldn't get back there. But just to remind them that there is hope, even though you can't be that same person, the new person that you're gonna be is just as good as the old one.
So, as family members, this is the time when we wanna open it up to interactive sessions where you can stretch and you can ask the questions, cause everyone's different, so why don't you ask some questions of the panel? Maybe it pertains to your own life or your loved ones or whatever. Kathy, you got a question?
Well, I was wondering, did anybody have to give up something they enjoy doing because of the role of caring for a loved one? And did you feel guilty, and how'd you deal with that?
Myself, I like action movies. You know, there's some good movies out there today. But like a lot of brain injury, TBI patients, noise, lights, sound, it's too much for her. So I have to basically give that up. I mean, she's always told me I can always call my brother up or go with my daughter, but I'm happy being at home with her, making sure, you know, enjoy the evening with her. So those are the things that I've given up. Fishing, not yet. Fortunately, when I do go fishing, if I go out in the ocean, on the beach, she loves to walk the beach. So we go together, we bring a lunch, and while I'm fishing, she can walk the beach. So I'm killing two birds with one stone. I'm making her happy, I'm making myself happy.
And she can't get lost.
And she can't get lost, especially at high tide, it's just back and forth. But that's what I gotta say.
And for me, I'm not the primary caregiver, my father is, so I don't feel I've given up a lot, but I do see that role of wanting to help him because, you know, and especially now that he has chemo brain and they're both together and trying to cope together. It's just that awareness of knowing that they're doing okay and checking in is my biggest worry.
Well, I actually have two younger siblings, and my mom is the main caregiver for my sister, and my mom would be down here for appointments. So I actually had to give up a lot of the time after school, hanging out with friends, sports, and I'd go home and watch the kids. So that was pretty difficult dealing with, but I don't feel guilty about it. I was just glad that I could be there to be a help. Even though I can't be with my sister, I can do something at the house to help the situation be better.
I think there was, did you have a question?
I'm newer in all of this. My husband's only 14 months out from a car accident. My two biggest things that I struggle with daily is people that come up and say, "How's Andy doing?" I work in an office of 22 women. You know, it's a daily thing. People will ask me, "How's he doing?" I don't know how to answer it. He doesn't know how to answer it. And my other thing is my parents are older, very much with the plan, but they are older, and they're from that generation that doesn't understand a brain injury. And he presents normal physically. So we also have a 9-year-old daughter, and so I feel like I have a constant struggle with the outside world because I don't know how to answer, "How is he?" I don't know how to educate my family because I'm still trying to get educated myself. And we're not in this area. We're 2.5 hours north. We don't have support groups. We don't have, right now we are very isolated, which is why we made the drive to come here today. So that's more my thing, is that I don't have the physical parts. I have the depression, the anxiety. His is a left frontal lobe injury. He was an accountant. He can't do simple math now. I mean, this is how dramatic our life has changed. And so I'm still going through day to day. I'm still getting up and going to work. I take him to rehab 3 days a week. I have our daughter, Girl Scouts, Glee Club, my parents, the whole thing. And I'm like you, I understand that there is no time for me yet. It will come, I think it will come, but
It will.
I don't know how to answer people. We had a very active life before, so we see friends, I see other kids, moms and dads at events that I go to, you know, and how's Andy doing? I don't know how to answer that.
The only thing I suggest I can say, you just tell him he's doing real well, he's getting better. I mean, that's basically the same answer that you would say if he was just plain sick now for a while. But just saying that he's doing very well, and thank you for asking. At least you have people out there who are interested in knowing how he's doing. So that gives you a little bit of relief of saying everybody knows how he's doing. Eventually, you tell it to one of your coworkers, and it might just spread down to the others. And eventually, it might taper off a little bit, but encourage it, embrace it. The people are there, as long as you have somebody that, you know, he's taken care of while you're doing the other stuff. Because I know your mind is doing here, but your mind is focused,
Always.
and that's how it's going to be forever. He's going to grow, you're going to grow, and like it's too bad you don't have a support group meeting, and hopefully they'll start further north, getting
Yeah.
a support group meeting, support group going, because it'll help you out. But just take it one day at a time, and this time he's progressing.
I poured my heart out to his family, though. His family is all right in our area. He has a brother and 2 sisters and a mom, and they're all in denial. Every one of them. Nobody reaches out to him. He is so isolated. He lost his license. I reached out to them and just said, you know, could you come and get him to take him to lunch once in a while? Take him to a movie, because the sound and light is not an issue for us at this point. But the peripheral vision came in, so they took his license. And I've tried, and I feel like I could talk to this wall easier. No responses, emails, in person, Facebook. I mean, I've tried every avenue to try to get him that extra family support, first off, before I even try anything else.
That's the worst part is educating the siblings. Like I said earlier, my brother had suffered a stroke 2 years prior, and I know my older brother was retired, so he was here during the rehab session, or his wife, or both of them, every day. I came here at least 2 or 3 times after work, because I was still working at the time, and to stay with him and to give his wife time to go home, do the housework, and then once I retired, he still had to have somebody 24/7. My brother would take him 2 or 3 days a week, just spend the day with him, or take him to his therapy or to the gym. So there was always somebody there, but everybody was focused on what he was doing and helped out. Family is important, and unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of survivors that we've talked to that it's been
I'd like to interject for a second, because I think you can't just tell people that you're interacting with all the time that he's getting better and things are fine. I think she's looking for a short answer to explain to people that care just what brain injury has done. You know, not a whole story, but a short answer that she can come back and say, well, you know, physically he's doing very well, but he's had some damage to his brain and it's gonna take a long time to readjust, or something along that line. You need to define, I think
given
you're
that
looking
answer.
for a definition of
Yes.
a brain injury that somebody can understand in just a few words. I think that's what she's looking for.
Well,
very well
and
put.
I've been at my job for almost 30 years, and so I have a lot of vacation time built up. Last year I took 9 weeks vacation. I am the envy of the office.
Yeah, little
You
do they
know.
know.
Yeah, you know, tell me what I did. You know, my husband's been denied disability twice. I lost his income. You know, we have no money, we're living off credit cards. You know, and I spend my weeks off. I mean, I was off last week, week before last, for school vacation week for our daughter, and also to try to help teach my husband how to use the bus system. So I can get him to rehab, but I can get him home. But there's a transfer bus in between, and he was struggling with that. So I have to work with the bus drivers, and so I spend my vacations running around to neuropsychologist appointment, and someone else that we're coming to, you guys might know down here in Wyndham, is a neuro ophthalmologist.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
And he's here
Dr.
today.
Robinson.
Dr. Robinson?
Yes.
He's here.
We're seeing him in just less than 2 weeks.
Oh, great.
We got referred to come down to see him.
Still
But-
find
Still
him
go
while
for
he's
your
here.
disability too.
Oh,
Don't-
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
give up. Get
Yeah.
a lawyer for the third time.
Yeah.
As a survivor, I mean, I know but as a survivor of an injury, I have to tell you that, no, you don't wanna walk around every day saying, my husband has a brain injury, my husband has a brain injury. But the minute that I decided to start saying to people, you know, I have a brain injury, and this right here is a challenge for me, or that right here is a challenge for me, I'm working with this, I'm working with that. It makes a big difference. Number one, you'll be surprised how many people will say, oh, what happened? I know, I had blah, blah, blah. It's amazing how many people are out there. But it's a burden off your shoulders. Not that you have to walk around with a sign on you that says, I have a brain injury, even though we have some great t-shirts.
He actually saw the T-shirt and wants to get one.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a big sign
But,
today.
but to be able to admit to yourself, to himself, the other thing I would offer to you is, in this packet, there are some great books that are great resources. Browse through some of those yourself, get the one you think that suits and fits best, and pass it out to those family members and have them read it.
Are they all in the library? In the
I
library?
I think so.
I'm not sure if
And
all
it
of
said
them
some
are
of them
there.
you, from Amazon.
But
and
you can,
things, yeah, I'm
any
big
one
on-
of these, you can get many through your library, they can order them interlibrary, most of them are available, or very inexpensively through Amazon. That, you know, for people who are not living with us daily and are in denial, that's a good resource for them. Someone in the back over here.
Obviously, some of you know Mindy's mom, but I just wanna add, my family, 3 years later, does not understand. My father still calls me every month to say, why did you just get a job?
Yep.
But you know what, I got Carol Starr, who was brought into my life at a time where I needed somebody to just listen to me cry and say, this is all normal. So I think you may not get support from your family, cause I don't at all, in most across
That
the
same
board.
conversation did happen just a
Like,
little bit
connect
ago.
with somebody from a
Why
support
doesn't he just get a
group.
job? Don't you
Maybe.
wanna support your family?
Yeah.
And they said that to him, and,
Where are
you
they?
know,
I
and
wanna
I'm
talk
just.
to these people.
I know, I will send, yeah, it is, it's amazing, but it is true, if you don't live with it,
Right.
then they do get little snippets of exposure. And he looks fine, except that he's put on 40 pounds,
Yeah.
cause he's eating everything in sight. But, you know, he doesn't have a physical injury to show, and he has said many times, I wish I did.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get more sympathy if you
We've all
said your
said
back
that.
hurt today.
Yeah.
Or to be in a wheelchair or crutches or something, but to just walk into a room and they sit there and they expect you to be who you were.
But that's why you have permission to tell people what the real situation
Oh,
is, and you have permission, he has permission to say, you know, I'm doing okay,
I think
but I
that's
could
the
use a little help.
yeah, I do the first part,
Mm.
cause I didn't sleep for probably the first 6 or 7 months, and I finally went to my doctor and said, I gotta have something to sleep. Cause everyone at work was seeing it.
Mm.
You know, I was tired all the time, I was crabby and hard to live with. But seeing people here today, I mean, of course, it's great, but you're all talking years, and I'm seeing, we're the new kid on the block here as far as, you know, to us, it's been like 14 months. But really, we have to look at it that it's only been 14 months.
You know,
Rest of your life.
14
Right.
months. I mean, that first 2 years is, there's so much going on during that time, and
Yeah.
obviously you have a lot in play.
First, I wanna say there's a sport group in Lewiston, I don't know how close that is.
We're in Old Town,
Okay,
just north of
well,
Bangor.
I'm not from Maine
Yeah.
originally, so I'm not exactly sure. But there is a sport group at Westside Neuro Rehab in Lewiston, if it's close to anyone,
You don't have anything in Bangor?
He's
not
at,
that I know of.
yeah, he's at Maine Center for Integrated Rehab for his rehab 3 days a week. And
That's
they're
not
wonderful.
Maybe it's a good time to
Yeah.
start one up in that area.
Yeah.
Is Scott Mayo still
Not a
the
branch.
executive director there?
Corinne Johnston.
Okay, you need to tell them that that's strongly needed.
Tell them that you came down here today.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that you went back with that
and I mean, and I push for the team approach between his counselor, the doctors, Now we're going through Acadia Hospital because they cannot get his meds right. I mean, they cannot tackle this. So I think trying to figure out the differences between what's the brain injury and what's depression and how the two don't seem to play nice together. You know, is what I always say, those two parts of his brain don't play well, and so there's a combination.
One of the things that, and I never can keep my mouth shut, but one of the things that we talk about is to get yourself down to this, I understand this injury, this is what it is, this is the effects. Then my suggestion is if you've been working at work for 30 years, take your closest companion that you have there. And don't go into great detail, but this is, everybody's asking about my husband. He has a brain injury. This is what he can do. This is where we're going. This is what we're trying. Believe me, in less than a week, it'll be all around the office. Everybody will understand brain injury.
And tell them it's something that's gonna go on forever, it
Right.
will get better,
Some
but
part
it
of
Yeah.
it.
will go on forever.
Right.
Doesn't go away in a week.
Well, and we haven't settled on the car accident, with the insurance company, so people will ask, of course, a lot of questions about that, because, again, I am open about these things. And they can kind of get fixated on that, when it's like, no, this is an ongoing, they've said his rehab is gonna be at least 2 years, and then reevaluate, I guess, from there.
Are you the one that said about the Social Security
Yes.
denial? Believe me, it all goes to the third time. The third time,
As frustrating as that is.
yeah.
Very few
Yeah.
times does it pass
Right.
first time. I
Third-
know a few people with cancer who got it
Yeah.
first time.
Yeah, first time they get rid of you, hoping you'll go away. The second time they turn you down, figuring you got a little persistence, but, we don't need that much. Third time you get it.
And the third time, they might wait until the day you're going to court.
But it's retroactive.
Yeah.
It is retroactive, so,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
while it doesn't help you now,
Filling
And-
out a social security form,
Oh.
everything, you think, well, I wanna bring my best foot forward.
No.
And when you fill out an application for social security disability,
Opposite.
it
You
is
gotta
the
bring the
exact
worst foot.
opposite. And to think that way, you have to force yourself to, answer the questions truthfully, but from the perspective of, how bad it is, not how good it is.
And
A
they said,
person without a brain injury couldn't fill out those forms. It's so detailed.
All right, we
It
have,
took us 4 days and 4 people to do it.
we have exactly 10 seconds, because we're a stickler for time.
Yeah, we hate
So-
to wind this up, but we want to remind you to fill out your evaluation. Seek out the others who you see in the room who may be interested in chatting. We're going to be going to lunch. Make sure you visit some of those alternative medicine fairs.
You can use
Booths.
the door in here.
Okay.
through here, and the lunches will be labeled as to whether they're turkey.
And if you've forgotten what you ordered,
You can take what you want.